Did anyone on here know that North Carolina has this thing? It's called the North Carolina Barbecue Trail, and it's this route that stretches across the entire state of 13 notable barbecue restaurants. And one fun fact about me is that I am going to eat at every single one of those restaurants before I die. And this story I'm about to tell you has three timelines: a scared timeline, an ambivalent timeline, and a curious timeline. Somebody just unmute real quick and tell me which timeline you'd like to hear first: scared, ambivalent, or curious?
Curious.
Curious. I am curious because I haven't heard from her in 6 years since she left California and ostensibly me to go back to her hometown in North Carolina. So when I get a text message from her that says she heard I'm going to be visiting my parents about 4 hours away from where she's living at the time, and she's wondering if I might like to get together, it's an immediate yes from me. Now, you guys might be better people than me with your therapy and your healthy decisions, but where I'm coming from, I've been long haunted by a lack of closure during our breakup over the last 6 years, okay? And on the record, I'll admit that every breakup, both parties are somewhat responsible, right? No breakup is ever just one person's fault. But off the record, this was totally on her. She just disappeared on me. And so if I have the chance to get one of those clasped hands, leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life conversations, then I'm going to take that chance. And so I wait a few hours and I respond like, yeah, sure, where would you like to meet? And she knows that I want to eat at all 13 restaurants along the North Carolina barbecue trail, and she's found one that's about halfway between her and I. And it's in a little town called Carthage, North Carolina, a town I'd only ever been to one other time in my life. And so we meet at this place in Carthage, and it's called the Pickin' Pig, Pik apostrophe N Pig. And our eyes are like as wide as dinner plates when we get in there because it is immediately obvious why this restaurant is on the North Carolina barbecue trail, and it's not because of the food. It's because the patio of the Pickin' Pig sits right on the green grass of the amateur airplane landing strip of Carthage, North Carolina. So that means you can shovel your face full of pulled pork drenched in vinegar-based barbecue sauce as you watch like a rickety bucket of bolts airplane come in and very nearly crash land on this grassy strip of land they call an airfield. And an old war vet kicks the door open and he hobbles out and he sits next to his war vet buddy who also flew in on his bucket of bolts, and they drink some sweet tea and they talk about old times, and then they get back in their airplanes and fly off from wherever they came from. And it is amazing, and it's so interesting, and it's so real, and it's exactly the kind of thing that her and I like to do together. The kind of thing that her and I used to like to do together. And we're sitting there having lunch, watching some planes take off and land, and we're catching up. And pretty soon, lunch is over, and we're having such a good time that we don't want to go our separate ways yet. So we spin around tiny little downtown Carthage, and we have a little adventure in the library, and we're still not ready to stop hanging out yet. And there's really nowhere else to go in Carthage, North Carolina. And so we're like, let's just go back to the Pickin' Pig. Why not? And we don't think this, the hostess there doesn't think this is nearly as amusing as we do, but she sort of gruffly sits us back at our old table anyway. And we order a dessert off the menu, something they have called Better Than Sex Cake, and it's fine. And we sit there eating dessert and we watch some planes take off and land in the actual sunset. And before long, the restaurant's closing and there's nowhere else for us to go. And we kind of have to admit that we got to go our separate ways. We have to part now. So we walk into the gravel parking lot and give each other a hug goodbye. And I stand and watch as she drives her car down the long, long, comically long driveway of the Pickin' Pig of Carthage, North Carolina. But then she gets right to where the road is and where she should turn off to head home. And she does a little U-turn and she comes back to where I'm standing. She rolls the window down and leans out. And I say, "Is everything okay?" And she says, "Yeah." She leans a little bit closer, and I say, "Why'd you turn around?" And she leans a little bit closer and says, "Well, I just wanted to say goodbye again." And I'm about to say, "Okay, goodbye again," when she leans even closer, and all of a sudden, we are in the middle of a kissing event right there in the gravel parking lot of the Pick and Pig of Carthage, North Carolina. And I am no longer curious. I know that her initial text message to me did, in fact, contain romantic intentions. And did you all know that North Carolina has this thing? It's called the North Carolina Barbecue Trail, and it's this stretch, this little route. It stretches across the whole city, and it contains, or the whole state. It has 13 restaurants on it, notable barbecue restaurants. And something I want to do before I die is eat at every single one of those barbecue restaurants. And this story has two timelines left. It has the ambivalent timeline and the scared timeline. Which one would you like to hear next?
Scared.
I'm scared because I'm in Carthage, North Carolina for the first time in my life, and I do not know what's happening. There are these haunting screams all around me, and these weird smells like fire and gasoline, and I'm being frantically jerked out of the car seat of my car, and then I'm being run into the backyard of a stranger's trailer where they're spraying me with a garden hose to get the glass off of my body. And now I'm in a hospital and I'm the one who's screaming because they won't give me my blanket back. They said, "I can't have my blanket. It's covered in oil and wreckage and it's not safe." And now my grandfather's standing in the doorway, which is odd because we didn't make it to his house yet. And he's holding this rectangle of fabric in his hands. And it turns out it's a piece of my blanket. He's gone back to the car and he's cut off the little bit of the blanket that's safe for me to hold. And I'm still upset because it's not enough, but it's going to have to do because it's all that's left. And in North Carolina, there's this thing. It's the North Carolina Barbecue Trail. It's a route of 13 barbecue restaurants that are notable for one reason or another. And something I want to do before I die is eat at every single one of those restaurants. And I'm feeling ambivalent. I'm feeling ambivalent because I'm in Carthage, North Carolina, just for the second time in my life. And the first time since the accident 40 years ago this summer. And in my family, the accident, it's taken on this mythological proportion. You don't have to say the car accident that Cory and his mom got into in Carthage, North Carolina when Cory was 2 years old. You can say the accident, and everybody knows what you're talking about. And I think for this reason, it has sort of ballooned beyond my emotional understanding and a scope of reality for me. And to me, over the last 20 years of my life, the accident has not become anything more than just a nifty little piece of trivia that I lug around for dinner party anecdotes and when I'm introducing myself. Oh, what's an interesting thing about me? I was supposed to be dead at 2 years old. But I've gotten older, and lately I'm older now than my mom was when she had the accident. There's been a growing desire in me to sort of understand the reality of the event and understand the ways it's contributed to the story of my family. But as I'm standing here at the site of the accident, I'm not really feeling anything. And I'm a little dismayed, but I have one more route I can pursue. Because after the accident happened, the Carthage Daily Bugle, or whatever their paper is called, sent us a little write-up that they printed in the paper. They mailed it to us, a write-up with a picture of the wreck. And when they sent it to us, it was printed on some kind of official news copy. It was like actually a plastic kind of material. And at some point in time over the years, it had gotten wrinkled, and my mom, bless her heart, she tried to straighten it out with an iron, and the whole thing just melted like a metaphor for the very real death of journalism that we're all witnessing. And with it went the sort of last touch point of understanding the reality of the car accident. And all that's left have just been sort of memories of a memory of a memory of a memory. And I tried to look the article up online and I couldn't track it down. But standing there at the site of the accident, and by the way, she's there with me, and one thing I'll say is that her and I didn't have the world's greatest relationship, but something she excelled at is if I ever showed a spark of excitement or an interest in something, didn't matter what was going on in our lives, she would drop everything to full-throatedly rally behind me and encourage me to pursue that thing. And so I say to her, I know this isn't the day that you had in mind, but I'm wondering if we could run by the Carthage Public Library to see if I could track down this newspaper article in their archives. And she's like, oh, we are absolutely doing that. And so we're marching down the street very determinedly from the little downtown area in Carthage to the public library, and we kick the doors open like we're in a cowboy film, and we turn to the microfilm section of the library. Do I have any young people in here that I need to explain microfilm to? Do we everybody here understand, remember microfilm? Okay, it's basically like a computer before there was a computer, an analog way to store newspapers in a really tiny strip of film, okay? So we turn to the microfilm section, and there's a bad sign. Literally a bad sign. It said, "We regret to inform you, but the microfilm section of the Carthage Public Library is no longer in operation." And I'm licked. I'm like, that was my last chance. And she grabs me and she turns me. She says, what are you talking about? There's nobody in this one-horse library. I'll stand guard, and you duck under that stanchion and dig through those files and find that article. And she did, and I do. And I start sorting through the files with the only piece of information that I have, which is the date of the accident, June 13th, 1984. So I find 1984, and then I find June. And I'm scrolling, I'm holding the film up to the light because of course the microfilm reader is also dismantled. And I'm scrolling through June 11th, June 12th, June 13th. And there's a picture that looks familiar to me. It's of the car. It's of my mom's car. It's allegedly of the car because what I'm looking at, I take a picture of it with my phone and then I zoom in and it doesn't look anything like a car at all to me. It looks like some kind of abstract sculpture of a car. There's a tire up here where a tire doesn't belong, and a door over here where a door doesn't belong, and a windshield down here where a windshield doesn't belong. And I don't see where there was any room in that car for a new mother and her 2-year-old son to have stayed alive. And then I read the first little sentence of the article below the picture, and it says, "Get out of the car, ma'am. It's gonna explode," the truck driver says to Cheryl Howard, my mom, as she's frantically trying to unbuckle her son from the car seat. And now I'm feeling ambivalent because I'm rethinking everything. All the times that I'd roll my eyes at my mom when I would startle her by not announcing loudly enough I was walking into the kitchen, or how tense she would get in a car if somebody tapped on the brakes just a little too firmly, and how annoyed I'd get with her that 3,000 miles away, living as a grown man, she'd still call me to find out if I got home safe from wherever I was. Because now I'm thinking about the one moment that's haunted her for the rest of her life. And the moment was probably only an instant, but it surely felt like much more than that. And it's the moment immediately following the collision, when she had to turn her head slightly to the right to find out if her 2-year-old son made it through the accident or not in one piece. And the morning after, I crossed the Pick and Pig of Carthage, North Carolina, off the list of the 13 restaurants on the North Carolina barbecue trail that I have eaten at. I'm awoken to a text, and it's from her. It says, "What have we done?" And I'm a little nervous as I see those little text bubbles pop up, waiting for the follow-through to find out what she's talking about. And it's a link to an article in the digital version of the Carthage Daily Bugle, or whatever their paper's called. And I click on the link, and the headline says, "Last night, in the middle of the night, the Pick and Pig of Carthage, North Carolina, caught on fire and burnt down to the ground."